Good afternoon, everybody. I hope everyone is doing well. My name is Carlton Kiner. I serve as the Associate Director of the Muller Center for Multicultural and Civic Engagement. You are here at the Muller Center Black Table Talk. Before we get started, I do want to introduce a couple people that are in the room. We are so glad to have a special guest with us today, but I do want to recognize Dr. Althea Richardson, who is the Vice President of Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, Belonging. Dr. Richardson, just wave your hand. All right. And we also have Ms. Deidre Clark, who is our Admin Assistant for DEIB. We thank Ms. Deidre as well for being here. And we thank you as students for being here as well as we continue to celebrate our events that we have going on for Black History. Before we get started, Ms. Glasgow would like for us to recognize the ancestors. As you know, within our African faith and traditions and heritage, we recognize our ancestors as many times as we can, and we would like to call on them. Permission?
Speak.
Thank you. And we will pour libation. The libation is just a beverage, a water, just a small little thing, and we recognize our ancestors. And when I pour the water into the plant, think of somebody, an elder within your family that may have gone on or may still be living. And when I call out my elder that I want to recognize, I will give you 1, 2, 3, and you call out an elder person in your family that you would like to recognize at this time. Rose Lee Connard. 1, 2, 3.
Almetta Barnes.
Thank you so much for participating. I'll now turn over to Dr. Peggy Winder.
Good afternoon, everyone. For those of you who do not know me, I'm Dr. Peggy Winder. I am a faculty member in the Department of Education, and I also serve as the director of the Muller Center for Multicultural and Civic Engagement. Thank you all again for being here. We are so excited today to have with us, especially a privilege to have with us, our first African American graduate of Newberry College. Ms. Umi Nandidi came in 1966 and she graduated in 1970. Please welcome Ms. Nancy Lou Manigault Anderson-Glasgow with us today.
We know that there will be some coming and going. We know that some of you all have to get to class, and we ask that you will please, if you need to exit the room, that you please exit respectfully and quietly as you can, because we are recording, and we're thankful for Mr. Marshall Maddy for recording this event today. All right. We will get into our questions. Miss Nancy, how are you doing today?
I'm well, too blessed to be stressed.
Awesome. Well, to get us started, we're going to talk a little bit and start off with your personal background and your decision to attend Newberry. So our first question, before we get into Newberry College, let's talk about your life before attending Newberry College. And what were your family and community like before attending Newberry?
Okay, prior to Newberry College, I was reared by my grandmother, Carrie A. Marshall, her brother, Leo Anderson, her sister, Janie Gregory, and her older sister, Nancy Pope. They are the ones who were very instrumental into where I am now. I was educated, when I tell you all the schools in Newberry County, I do mean all the schools in Newberry County. Drayton Street Elementary, Gallman High, and Newberry College. My grandmother was very, very strict, very strict. And I thank God today for that upbringing. I thank God today for her being as strict with us as she was with us. I was reared with 2 siblings, David Anderson Jr. and Daisy Lee Anderson. Daisy Lee Anderson Harris. Now, the three of us grew up, as they say, we were very, very sheltered. My grandmother was very, very protective, which is why she had to, we always say she ruled not with an iron thumb, but two iron fists. And as I said, we are very appreciative of that discipline that she used with us. At that particular time, it appeared to be very harsh. But it wasn't. It was what we needed. It really was what we needed to become the adults that we are today. My school life, I was educated by the very best teachers, the very best teachers. They also was very disciplinary. And they would discipline us, but we were never punished. There's a difference between being disciplined and being punished. And thank God for those teachers. If I began naming them, I'm going to miss some. But I do have to name one, and that was Katie Shells. Two, Katie Shells and Addie Perry. Those two teachers nurtured me as if I were their own child. When the other teachers would make me feel uncomfortable, I could go to those two teachers, share with them, and feel much better. Also, Miss Wilhelmina Coleman. She was our general teacher, and she taught typing. And I'm so thankful that I took that class. Although I was in the academic class, we had two types of classes. You had general, and you had those that was for collegiate. And I was in the collegiate class. However, I was supposed to have been in the general class. But as I said, those three teachers said that I needed to be in the collegiate classes. And so there I was in the collegiate classes. Okay, upon graduating or getting ready to graduate, our senior year, Newberry College, 1966, came to us during the spring, towards the end of the academic year. And they were looking for students to enroll in Newberry College. And in the course of the conversation, they did mention that there would be at least 10. They wanted at least 10 students to be enrolled in Newberry College. Whether they were from Newberry or other places, they were seeking at least 10. Well, at that particular time, no one had any interest in going to Newberry College. At least I didn't, and I don't think anyone else had either. I told my grandmother that I wanted to go to South Carolina State, Johnson C. Smith, or Spelman. And she wanted me to go to Benedict or Allen. And there's nothing wrong with those colleges. They are excellent colleges today. But knowing my grandmother, she would have been in a car or on the bus every day, every day. So that's why I chose those three colleges, because of the distance, hoping she would at least give me South Carolina State University. So she said, no, Benedict or Allen. And my reply was, if I have to camp on your doorstep, I might as well stay in your house. I'm going to apply at Newberry College. Well, my grandmother worked with white people, but no way in the world was she going to let me go to Newberry College by myself. But I was determined. So as time became closer, she decided to yield, and I decided to yield. We had settled on South Carolina State. So when I explained to the guidance counselor that I'm no longer interested in Newberry College because my application was just to intimidate her so that she would let me go where I wanted to go. Well, next thing we knew, there were the gentlemen, and I know one in specifically, Conrad B. Park. Dr. Conrad B. Park was the academic dean at that particular time. He and two other gentlemen came to my grandmother's house to talk with us. And my grandmother said, oh, there's no way that she's going to be over there by herself. And they assured us, oh, she's not going to be by herself. We expected at least 10. So my grandmother and I agreed, and they also stated that if she doesn't like it, then she can transfer. If she just give us 1 month with all the others. And of course, we said, my grandmother and I discussed it, and we said, well, it would be exciting to intermingle with other people and to be at home at the same time.
So, Miss Nancy, as you get to Newberry College, you was told that there was going to be 10 others that will attend Newberry College.
Well, nine. I would be number 10. Let me correct.
Including yourself, which makes it 10. And you always told this story to me, and I'm glad that we are now sharing it with everyone else to understand your history and your story. When you got here, I believe you all had convocation or like a welcome ceremony you mentioned to me a while back. And it was Dr. Wiles?
A.G.D. Wiles.
President Wiles, and that's who Wiles Chapel is named after of everybody.
Dr. A.G.D. Wiles.
President Wiles came up to the front, and what did he say in that moment?
Well, prior to that, allow me to say this. I had what they call pre-orientation. That is, they introduced me to everybody on the campus, people that would be interacting with me. Now, later I learned that there were some professors who stated that not to put me in their classes, because if I walked in, that was an automatic F, automatic failure. So my teachers and my work study, I was in work study, were selected. And I did the work study at Wessel's Library my entire 4 years. During the pre-orientation, Dr. Parks said to me, we're not going to put this in the newspaper or do any kind of publicity because of what's happening in the country now. And my quote was, if God didn't know I was here, I wouldn't tell him. So during orientation, this was and I wondered when I had pre-orientation, well, where are the other 9? You know, I kept looking. Well, I'm going like, okay, they're giving me pre-orientation because I'm closer. I'm at home, and they can do it now. The others are going to get pre-orientation a little bit later before we actually began school. Okay, so now get into the convocation or the orientation. I walked, if anybody know in Newberry, from 2331 Johnstone Street. There's a house with a fence around it that faces the street called Wise Street. That's where we lived. And I would walk from that house all the way to Newberry College. My entire, the fall part of the freshman year. During the winter, taxi cab by the name of Hare Taxi, Tom Hare Sr. was the owner of that particular company. Anytime during the winter months, I would ride with him. And he would not charge my grandmother But my grandmother was the type of person, we didn't do charity. So he said, well, just give me $5 a week for gas. And anytime we needed to come to a special event at Newberry College, he would be right there. He was just one of those, when I said it takes a village, he was a member of the village. But going back to that particular day, I wanted to walk. I was just so elated, going to meet, especially going to meet the other 9 students. That was going to be the highlight of the event. Well, when I got into the auditorium, and we were in Holland Hall at that particular time. The auditorium was in Holland Hall upstairs. And you had 3 aisles. You had your left aisle, your center aisle, and your right aisle. Well, I decided to sit in the left aisle. I didn't want to be conspicuous, so I'm going to sit in the 4th row on the left aisle, first seat. When Dr. Wiles got up to speak, there were 6 empty rows on the left side, 7 empty rows on the right side. So I'm saying to myself, is a special attendance, are these reserved for anyone? I'm thinking, oh, I need to go back and sit further. But something said, no, stay where you are and see what's going to happen. Now, mind you, I'm sitting there, and I'm the only one in the 4th row on the left side, on the end, the beginning of that row. 3 empty rows in the front of me, 3 empty rows behind me. Over to my right, 7 empty rows. And Dr. Wiles got up and he said, we have a new experience this year. He never did mention my name. He said, we're not going to embarrass her by asking her to stand. And I'm going like, okay. I think it's quite obvious as to what the new experience is. So we went through orientation, et cetera, and I'm still saying to myself, well, the other 9 students are in the rear. Or, you're telling yourself you are not here by yourself. Because you are thinking about, if I'm here by myself, I don't know if I'm going to stay. I don't know. So anyway, after orientation, we walked outside, and I looked and looked and looked and searched and searched and searched. Well, where are the other 9? I know they're around here somewhere, surely. So then I tell myself, oh, well, they must be coming later because they're from out of state, from other areas in the county. You tell yourself, but in your gut, you get this feeling.
Miss Nancy, I'm sorry to cut you off.
Go ahead.
You figured out that they had not arrived yet, but you're going to continue to do what you need to do.
That day.
Absolutely, that day.
That day.
And as you began, going to your classes, how were you received by students and other faculty?
Well, first let me go to that day. And I want to recognize a student by the name of Christine Varon.
Right.
She came to me and she said, she embraced me. She said, it's going to be all right. And I teared up. I teared up. She said, it's going to be all right. And that entire day, she was the instrument that kept me from walking off that campus.
Right.
She's deceased now. But in writing my book, hopefully we can find her descendants, because I want to pay tribute to her. She said to me, she said, I'm an Army brat. And she said, we are accustomed to different cultures. And she made me feel very comfortable that entire day until I got ready to leave. So that, I titled this, The Good. The good was when I left to walk. The bad was when there were no other 9. The ugly, when there was no, when they found, no, the bad was being sitting by myself. The ugly was when the other 9, I couldn't find them. But there were godliness. Christine was the godliness. Godliness. It trumps the bad and the ugly. You start out with the good, and then you run into the bad and the ugly, but the godliness come along.
Along with Christine, were there other supporters?
Yes. My roommate, well, not roommate, there was a sophomore by the name of Nancy Seal Dennis. She was assigned to me to be my monitor, my student monitor, to make sure that I was very comfortable. She introduced us. She said, I'm used to black people. She said, because I'm from Charleston, yada, yada, yada. And we became friends right away. She came up to me. She introduced, I'm Nancy Seal. And Nancy was so sweet until she gave me the key to her dorm room. Anytime, day or night, you want to go into that room to sleep, to rest, this is the key. So she was my second godliness. My third godliness was at the workplace, Wessel's Library. Her name was Joanne Morris Street Rivers. I'm trying to find these people, so if anyone can help, please reach out. Joanne Morris Street River was the first person to invite me to her house for lunch. She was the secretary in the library. And that just made my day when she invited me. She said, you want to go to my house for lunch? I said, okay. Yes. And she, while I was in the library, she was my protector in the library. She was my godliness. My other godliness or goddess would have been Miss Mary Ann. She was the mother of Miss Mary Alice Baker, if anybody know Miss Mary. When I went into Derek's dorm, that's where we would meet to do the soap operas. Miss Mary Ann would be dusting the banister when I got in the building and went up the stairs. I could stay up there all night long. When I come down, Miss Mary Ann was dusting the banister. And every once in a while, we would see Miss Mary Ann on the campus. Not campus, going up and down the hall, popping in the room, that room that I was in. She would pop in that room. Y'all all right in here? Yes. Those were my protectors on campus. We also had Mr. Charlie Gillum. Now, I would try to speak to everybody, but I didn't want anyone to lose their jobs. Because once I enrolled in Newberry College, people lost their jobs in the city of Newberry, in the county of Newberry, my grandmother being one of those individuals. It was a time, you have to remember this was in 1966. Right. It was a time of much unrest in the country. The entire United States of America was like a time bomb.
Knowing that and realizing that, as you were moving around campus, you often talked about other people looking after you.
Yes.
And making sure you got from one building to the next building.
Yes, those people, I mentioned Mr. Charlie Gillum. There were people in the cafeteria that would make me comfortable, the lakes, so many others. But I do remember the lakes initially. Also, across the street was Mr. Mr. Andrew and Jenny K. Gillum. Mrs. Jenny K. Gillum was my second grade teacher. So you can imagine how she felt when she had a student that she had in the second grade being the first African American to enroll in Newberry College. Now, going back, like I said, there were many, but these are the ones that just really, I really have to recognize.
In the classroom itself, were there any challenges that you saw or that
Oh,
took place? What types of things?
In the classroom, Dr. Melvin Riggs, psychology department, he and his wife invited me to their house. They were the first professors, and his wife. Her name was Wilma Riggs. Who would know that Miss Wilma and I would be riding together to my future school?
Wow.
No idea. Beverly Lakato, another one of my goddesses. When Nancy Seal graduated, Beverly Lakato was her roommate. And she also said, keep the key. Beverly invited me to her house, and we had dinner at her house. And these are just a few. There were others. But we're doing a book, and their names will be in the book. Now, when there were special events on the campus, I always made sure, for example, the president's meeting the parents, I always made sure that these people accompany me. Miss Jenny K. Gillum, my second grade teacher, my grandmother, Carrie Anderson-Marshall, and my Aunt Janie Anderson-Gregory. And my grandmother would say, oh, I can't go. They're going to be so proud. Miss Jenny K. said, girl, get your clothes on. We're going. And that happened the entire 4 years. There's a picture somewhere where my grandmother, Carrie, and my Aunt Janie attended one of the football games. And I'm looking for that picture. I'm hoping it's somewhere. And my Aunt Janie was crunched up like this, and she was frowning. And my grandmother said, Janie, why were you looking like this? She said, it was cold. I was so cold. But we stayed during the entire game.
Miss Nancy, so to start on the reflection of your impact of being here, being the first black student, and then leading into being the first black student to graduate from Newberry College. Looking back, how do you think your experiences as the first black student shaped your life and your career after you graduated?
Well, first look at the percentage of African Americans that's on the campus. That tells you. That tells you. How did it impact my life? It prepared me for my workplace because I'm an educator, retired educator, and one of the schools is Spears, where the teaching center is, Spears Street Elementary School. Never did I believe that I would be teaching in a situation where I would be the only African American teacher. And the principal at that time requested that I stay. Spears Street and Boundary Spears was going to house all of the first grade teachers, and Boundary was going to house all the second and third grade students. Well, when he asked me to stay at Spears, I thought about my son, Russell Lamont Glasgow. And I wanted to be there during his first year in school. But no one would know that I was his mother. And we only had one situation at Spears wherein they discovered that I was his mother. And he and his first grade teacher had a disagreement about the word dear, D-E-E-R. She said because of the two E's that one was silent and the other was not. So Lamont marked the answer that said dear had the R control. She said it was incorrect. So when Lamont shared it with me, I said, go get the dictionary and you look it up. I never would interfere with the teacher unless, and I never needed, once that incident happened, and he carried the dictionary to her, so he said, Mama, I'm all right now. And that was that experiment with Spear Street. So when the second and third grade moved to Boundary, there were only two of us at Spear Street. And she became ill and passed on. So for 3 years, they didn't look for anyone else. So that experience with Newberry College prepared me for that in my work career. See, one thing I realized, that God, that the universe, that whatever deity you want, planned all of this. This was not coincidental. Everything in our life is planned. Yes, we have free choice, but you have free choice to choose your destiny. Your destiny is out there. And we have free choice to choose, because it was not in my program to be a teacher. When I enrolled in Newberry College, I wanted to go to Secretary of Science or Social Sciences. Well, they eliminated the secretariat because of funding. They had to eliminate the Secretary of Sciences. Okay, Social Science is still here. Well, my advisors said that I was too subjective. I could not be objective. So, no, you cannot go into the social sciences. Okay, what's left? Math, teaching. Think I'd take teaching, language arts.
Good deal.
That was, math was not my strong suit. I loved to write. I loved to write poetry at that time. I loved to write stories, etc. So that's how I became a teacher. And there's nothing wrong with being a teacher. Best career in the world. But everybody thought that people with a lot of melanin in their skin only could be preachers or teachers.
That's right.
And I knew I wasn't going to be a preacher, so I had to be a teacher. But that was the divine plan before I was in my mother's womb.
Right. So for many of you, you may already know that Miss Nancy Lou Manigault Anderson-Glasgow has a classroom that is named in her honor over at the Center for Teacher Education. It's classroom 127. So if you haven't noticed that, definitely take time to go by there and check that out. But I just want to backtrack a little bit, if you don't mind. And when you realize that you were still the only one, you were still waiting on the other 9, how did you get through that?
Well, I think about the third or fourth week, I asked Dr. Parks, I said, Dr. Parks, what's happening to the other 9 students? They should be here by now. And he said to me, he said, well, we decided that we wanted to see what's going to happen to you. I was going like, oh, no. That is not what you told my grandmother and me. No. I'm leaving. I am not. And the consensus was that you will not leave. And I'm going, well, what's stopping me? We control all colleges, including the black colleges. Wow. And if we don't want you, if you decide that you're not going to stay, collegially, you will not be successful, nor your descendants. Now, you have to remember, this is in 1966. They were the powers to be. So I had to make a choice. I either had to, excuse the expression, put on my big girl's drawers and pull them up and stay, or risk the future of my descendants and myself. because my goal was I got to go to college. This is so important in my family, is to go to college. It was important that I graduated high school because I was the first to graduate high school, and I would be the first to go to college. So I say to myself, well, this is not predominantly, all white college. So if I stay, then others who live in Newberry will have the opportunity to attend also.
Ms. Nancy, you indeed have blazed a trail, and you continue to blaze that trail as well for our students who are here now. What advice, and you kind of alluded to it just a tad bit when you were speaking, what advice would you give to current or future students, especially those who might be facing challenges related to race or identity?
First, you have to have a higher power to guide you. You can have a god, a goddess, any deity. My deity at that particular time was God, because I was raised as Christian Baptist Christian. Now, I embrace spirituality, which embraces all deities, all religions. And this comes from my religious experience at Newberry College. There was a professor by the name of Dr. Grady Cooper. And he was so fascinated with his lectures until I could not take notes. So I asked him if I could take his classes, and he said yes. And I did not realize the impact he had when people listened to those tapes until we did parent orientation our freshman year. And when he was introduced, my grandmother said, "Oh, you're the person that she's got on those tapes. I like your messages." I'm going like, wow, I didn't even know she was listening. We would be in the kitchen, because that would be the gathering place, in the kitchen. And I would be doing my homework, and she was listening to his tapes. Well, he shared so much with me within the classroom and privately. We would have talks. And what was fascinating about Dr. Cooper is mostly he rode a bicycle. I think when he must have been in his 70s or 80s when we had him. But what intrigued me was that when you walked into his classroom, he would be standing on his head. When you walked out of his classroom, he would be standing on his head. And the information he shared, when I look back or reminisce, it has influenced my spirituality. He was worldwide. He was a worldwide. And Newberry College at that time, and may probably so now, the religious department was the most important department of the college. That was the most important department. And to have such a renowned person as Dr. Grady Cooper, that was a blessing.
So, Ms. Nancy, you were here, how many years were you at Newberry College before the next African American came to Newberry College?
3. Oh, that was something. Yes. They would not recruit anyone else. As they said, and they really meant what they said, we got to see what happens to you first. How we're going to survive.
So the 4 years you were here, you was the only one the whole
For 3
time?
years.
3 years. 3 years you was here the whole
During
time.
my senior year, 3 students enrolled, Carolyn Pitts and Donald and Ronald Kennedy.
The twins.
The twins.
Yeah.
Now,
The
Carolyn,
twins are still living. They came to homecoming, I believe last homecoming and a couple 2
yeah,
years
they've been
ago.
to a couple events.
And Miss Carolyn Pitts, who when she married was Carolyn Glimp,
Yeah,
was the first African American student to stay on campus.
right.
And she has now passed. But
Yes.
go ahead.
Right.
And she, they recruited to her. She was headed for Spelman. And they used the word free. You will be, everything will be free for the next 4 years. And Carolyn always have
I
us
wish I had
laughing.
that. Mhm.
She said free was the magic word.
I'll say.
And she was the first to, I believe, to stay on campus. She has a cousin, and her name escapes me now. But in the research, we're trying to find all these people during Miss Carolyn's and the twins' years, because I'm thinking that they may have come in this second semester. The twins came the first semester, and Ronald and Donald commuted from Winsboro. They commuted, and hopefully you all will get their stories.
Mhm.
There may be relatives of Carolyn that you can give you her stories and experience. The one thing I remember that she shared with us was they had communal bathrooms and places where you shower, your hygiene. And it was in the basement of Smeltzer. She was in Smeltzer Hall. And she happened to get down there before everybody else one day. And she didn't realize it till she kept hearing all this muttering upstairs, on the stairs. And she said, what's going on, The students would not come down as long as she was down there in the shower and taking a bath or whatever.
Mm.
Carolyn said, this particular day, I stayed until I withered. She said, I became wrinkly all over. And she said, finally I heard somebody say, I got a date. I'm going down. She would always share that story. She said, then everybody else came down, and from then on, it was okay to bathe while she was down. But
So,
go ahead.
all right, so we got about 15 minutes left. I know we want to open it up for folks who may have questions at the end. Just in closing, as you see, Newberry College will continue to progress. We have not reached the mark yet. We still have some more room to grow. But how do you think the racial climate at Newberry College changed during and after your time here?
Well, from what I can see, the professors and all, you don't have any professors that says, I don't want any black students in my classrooms. That has changed. And that's the most important part, is the acceptance. I need to share this. Many, many years later, after I graduated from Newberry College, Mrs. Riggs called me one day and she said, did you ever wonder why nobody ever touched you physically at the college? I said, yes, ma'am, I sure did. She said, the word had gone out through the entire state that if anything happened to you or your family or any of your associates, that not only would Newberry College burn, but the entire state of South Carolina. Well, and she said, I want you to come down. I think she was near transitioning. She was up in age. And before I could get to her to get all of the information, she transitioned. Well, I thought it was the Black Panther. In fact, I thought maybe she was just had a little bit of dementia or something, and maybe that was. Years later, I was somewhere having a conversation with somebody, and we made a joke about, yeah, Newberry College gonna burn, state is out. And this individual said, that's a true story. I'm going like, what you talking about? Like Willis or different strokes. What do you mean? And he said he was up in age. He was 25 years my senior, everything. He said, I was one of the participants, and we marched from Gervais Street Cairo Temple 125. We marched to the governor's office, Governor McNair, and we carried torches and the galvanized kerosene cans. He said, and they were not tiki torches. They were torches. When we arrived at the governor's office, we asked to see the governor. His receptionist said, go right in. He said, Governor McNair was very receptive. And we said to him, we understand there's a black woman, because at that time the word black, at Newberry College. And we understand that she is to enroll, but she is not to graduate. He said, now, we're going to leave this torch with you and this kerosene can, because if anything happens to a single hair on her head, her family, her associates, not only will we burn Newberry College, but the entire state of South Carolina. We have nothing to lose, nothing. We're tired. And they departed, leaving the torch and the kerosene can. The third time I heard that story was from a gentleman by the name of Ned West. Mr. Ned has now transitioned, but we were able to record him telling that and sharing that story. Cairo Temple 125, Shriners.
Wow, that's
Now,
some history.
I asked the legislator in Newberry to help me to do the research, because he was just coming into as a representative. And he said, just leave that alone. Don't research it. Well, you know, you tell me no, and you can't tell me why, then I have to find out why. Right. So I don't know if there's anybody who have relatives that are old enough to, who may have been in the government at the time and know, or they may have heard it on the streets or something, because they marched. Now, somebody somewhere other than those two people who were actually the participants know this story. Wow. Hopefully, they'll be brave enough to come forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, Ms. Nancy, there's still a lot to unpack with your story, and we thank you for just being here and always being available to share your story. I know we sat down many times over the phone. You have just told me everything about your Newberry College story. But one thing I want to do, let's give Ms. Nancy a round of applause.
Before we do that, I would like to say one more thing. I don't know if you all experience what they call Rat Week, where freshmen are subordinate to the upper class.
No, we don't do that no more.
Anyway,
It's called hazing.
Right.
Yeah, they asked me did I want to participate, and of course I did.
Of course.
But they made sure all I had to do was dink. I wasn't allowed. And dinking, we used to wear red hats. And when you saw an upper class person, then you would squat and take your hat off. That was dinking. And we enjoyed it. But they made sure that whatever they requested, they would ask me if I wanted to do it. And that was the fun part of one of the, fun events of Newberry College.
Your socialization.
Yeah,
Well, y'all had some time, I see.
I'm glad. I'm very happy that they did actually to participate, because I would have felt so awful if I wanted to participate in everything at Newberry College, that they did. And I need to share this. One of the individuals I forgot to mention was Paul Hardwick. Paul was from Timmonsville. We met in the library. And I never shall forget, I decided to come to the first homecoming game my freshman year. And I walked. I walked from I was supposed to have a date, but he didn't show. But I was determined. And we were playing, I believe, Appalachian at the time. And I heard somebody in the audience says, "Get that damn nigger." And I said, "Which one?" There are only three of us, two on the field and me. Paul walked over to me, put his arms around me, and said, "That's just somebody drunk." And I walked back home by myself with those words ringing in my ears. So that gives you an idea. That was my freshman year. And when I tell people if it weren't for God, I would not have survived. That was godliness. That was God that got me back home safely. Because we lost that game.
Well, Miss Nancy, I just want to thank you again for all your sacrifices, because I know I certainly would not be here and have done the things that I've done if it were not for you. So I appreciate all that you have done.
Yes, let's give her one more round of applause.
All that you've done.
Now, we would like to open it up to if anyone may have any questions. Any questions?
So you talked about the football games. Did you go to the basketball games? And if so, did you go with friends? Were you by yourself? How was the environment at social events in general?
Well, let me tell you about my grandmother. When I asked her, could I spend the night, because Nancy had invited me to spend the night with her, my grandmother's reply was, "I can barely get through today." When the phone rings, I jump out of my skin because I'm thinking it's somebody calling to tell me that something has happened to you. Hell no. You're not on that campus at night unless it's a special program. You're not spending the night. I'm going to sleep at night. Yeah. So no, anything that happened at night, and as I said, we attended, my first football game was the first homecoming game during my freshman year. I didn't attend any others except that one night, and I think that was a homecoming game at night with those two elders. Ms. Gillum said she didn't want to go because it was too cold. But as I said, any events that we had at night that was open to the public, those three people accompanied me. Because I wanted the world to know who's responsible for me being here.
More question.
Hey, Miss Nancy.
Hotep.
First of all, thank you again for all the sacrifices you made to desegregate Newberry College and make it possible for others to follow in your footsteps. The question that I have, you talked about wanting to be involved in student activities and extracurricular things. Were you involved in any student organizations or anything like that while you were here?
Dr. Frank L. Hoskins was one of my professors during my freshman year, and I participated in the literary magazine called The Connecticut. I don't know if that magazine is still on the campus. But my entire 4 years, and if you have access to the yearbooks from 1966 through 1970, we were one of those unusual groups. Senior year, when we did our pictures for the yearbook, we would take them in the graveyard. We would take them among the bells at the chapel. We climbed up. So, yes, that was the only group. I was very disappointed that the student organization did not invite me to participate. The entire 4 years. And I only, I didn't try to put myself on anybody. But that was the one biggest disappointment, is that the Day Student Organization did not invite me to become a part of, to participate in.
Gotcha. Another question?
Hey, how you doing? My name is Johnny. I just want to say your story was very inspirational, and I appreciate hearing it. But my question is, like, what type of activities did they have on campus for you?
Well, there were no special activities. During my senior year, I was dating my former husband, John Glasgow, and we attended social events. As a matter of fact, if you look in the 1970 yearbook, there's a picture of the two of us. And of course, we were the only African Americans there at that particular time.
Hey, how you doing, Miss Nancy? My name is Santori Jones. My question for you today is, given the current political climate with, President Trump being reelected, how do you suggest, people of color all around, not just black people, but, other people of color as well as, immigrants, stay together or, uplift each other during these tough times?
Well, not only people with a lot of melanin, but people with very little melanin need to come together, and anything other than violence, we must be non-violent.
Right.
But we can do this just as Dr. King set the goals and we got the goals. Remember, we have not yet integrated. And until integration occurs, there will always be this unrest. We desegregated, but we never integrate. And that's what the goal is to integrate. But as I say, he proved that nonviolence. So there must be no violence and no bloodshed. That is what the other group wants. They want violence. They want bloodshed. Right now, there are so many militias that are armed with the most powerful rifles, guns, whatever, in the world that will tear your body apart. And this is what we are facing. January 6th, we shall never forget that day like we remember 9/11. Always remember January 6th. People died on that day because of anarchy, because somebody would not accept the fact that he did not win the election. He did not win the election. The story goes is that he could not accept loss because his father's ghost haunts him. And his father said, "You will never lose." That's the theory that they have as to why that anarchy occurred. And had it not been for his security guards, he would have participated. But they would not allow him to. Okay.
As we come to a close, let us one more time give Miss Nancy one big round of applause. And I do want to recognize our co-sponsors for this event, the Newberry College Black Student Union. They are here. Just stand or wave your hands if you're still here. There's Layla, there's Bree. Thank you to the Newberry College Black Student Union for co-sponsoring. And to our colleagues, I see Dr. Lerone Wilder in the back and also Pastor David Kaufman. Thank you for being here as well. So, and also Dr. Tracy Power, who is also our history professor and archivist of Newberry College as well. So thank you all so much. If you all want to continue to mingle and chit chat and chew, you are welcome to do so. Miss Nancy will be here, and we're going to get her some lunch and have her to socialize with you all as well. But again, we want to say thank you to everyone who participated and attended.
May I say one other thing?
Closing words, Miss Nancy.
Miss Nancy, okay. Umi, Nande di, go go. Let's say that together. Umi,
Umi,
Nande di,
Nande di,
go go.
go go.
Now, I always include my parental name out of respect for them. I will not change and put Umi Nande di Gogo as my name on any of my official documents. And that's out of respect for those people that helped me to become what I am.
Well, thank you so much, Miss
Thank you
Nancy.
again, Miss
Umi Nande
Umi
di
Nandi
go
Didi
go.
Go Go.
Thank you, everybody, and have a great afternoon.